Imagine waking up one morning in England, 1066, and everything is about to change. Your king, your laws, even the language you speak. That's the story of William the Conqueror, the man who flipped medieval England on its head. Let's dive into how he pulled it off and left a legacy that still shapes the world today. Let's rewind to England in early 1066. Edward the Confessor, the King of England, had just died childless. Oops. This little detail threw the country into chaos. Who gets the crown? Enter Harold Godwinson, a powerful English noble who snagged the throne. But wait. Across the channel, William, Duke of Normandy, heard the news and said, "Hold up, that's my throne." Why? Well, he claimed Edward promised it to him years ago. Apparently, Edward had a thing for making questionable promises. William wasn't about to let Harold keep the crown without a fight. So, he rounded up his Norman army and sailed across the English Channel in what can only be described as the medieval version of Survivor, England edition. The showdown came at the famous Battle of Hastings on October 14, 1066. Picture it, thousands of Norman knights and English soldiers clashing in a brutal fight. Harold's army held the high ground, smart move, but then the Normans pulled off a sneaky trick. They pretended to retreat, and when Harold's men chased them downhill, the Normans turned around and wham, the trap was set. Harold? Let's just say he didn't walk away from that one. Legend says he caught an arrow in the eye. Ouch! With Harold gone, William declared himself king and earned the nickname William the Conqueror. Not exactly subtle, but hey, it worked. Now, conquering England is one thing. Running it? That's a whole different ballgame. William didn't just want to rule England, he wanted to reshape it from the ground up. Here's how he did it. 1. Feudalism, the Norman power. Move. First, William introduced feudalism. It's like a giant medieval pyramid scheme, but instead of cash, you paid your dues in land and loyalty. William gave huge chunks of English land to his Norman supporters. In return, they promised him military service. English nobles? Most were either stripped of their land or given the boot entirely. The result? England's upper class got a Norman makeover faster than you can say croissant. 2. The Domesday Book, medieval spreadsheets. Next, William wanted to know exactly what he owned and what he could tax. So, in 1085, he ordered the creation of the Domesday Book. This was basically a giant medieval census, listing everything from who owned which cows to how many pigs lived in the village. Imagine someone walking into your house today and saying, "All right, how many Netflix subscriptions do you have and what's in your fridge?" That's the level of detail we're talking about here. The Domesday Book gave William unparalleled control and ensured no one could wiggle out of paying their dues. 3. Castles. Castles. Everywhere. William was a huge fan of castles. In fact, he built them faster than Starbucks opens new stores. These weren't just homes, they were military fortresses designed to keep the English population in check. The Tower of London? Yep, that's one of his. Every castle William built was a giant "do not mess with me" sign to the locals. 4. Language and culture. Bye-bye. Old English. Here's a fun twist. William and his Normans didn't speak English, they spoke Norman French. Suddenly, all the cool kids in England were using French words for fancy stuff. Words like beef and pork come from the French, while the English peasants, who raised the animals, used words like cow and pig. This linguistic mashup eventually created modern English, a delightful mix of Anglo-Saxon grit and Norman flair. William also shook up the church. He replaced Anglo-Saxon bishops with Normans and brought the English church under tighter control. If you were a religious leader in England, you answered to William, or else. By the time William was done, England was unrecognizable. The Norman conquest wasn't just a military win, it was a cultural revolution. Feudalism, castles, French-influenced English, and a centralized government became the backbone of the country. Even today, William's influence lingers. The legal system? The roots trace back to his reforms. The English aristocracy, its Norman beginnings shaped centuries of history. William died in 1087 after a long and, let's be honest, brutal reign. But his legacy, that's immortal. He took a divided England and turned it into a powerhouse. Love him or hate him, William the Conqueror wasn't just a king, he was a game changer. So, the next time you hear someone complain about how complicated English spelling is, just blame William the Conqueror. If you enjoyed this wild ride through history, hit that subscribe button. Because let's face it, history is way too entertaining to be boring.